"I think your leg just called for help," Daniel said, tilting his head as if he were listening to the cyborg's left thigh. The classroom went silent. 30 pairs of alien eyes stared at him in varying degrees of disbelief, while the cyborg in question, a wiry student named Kyle, shifted uncomfortably on his seat. He wasn't sitting upright so much as leaning into the table like a toppled statue. A faint whir came from his joints every time he tried to move, and the sound was painful to hear. His face, half flesh and half steel plate, did not twitch. He couldn't even muster the strength to look annoyed. This was the Galactic Academy of Concord, a shining campus built above the atmosphere of a neutral trade world, where young minds from across 100 species were expected to learn cooperation, engineering, and diplomacy. It was supposed to be a place of harmony and academic rigor, but harmony frayed when one student malfunctioned in full view of his peers. Kyle's chair groaned as he tried to straighten himself. Then his body locked. A metallic click echoed across the hall. "Don't listen to him," muttered Renek, a scaled classmate from the Shivar colonies. "Humans like to make jokes out of everything. His limb is failing, yes. But what could you possibly do?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He was human, 19 years old, lanky in build, and perpetually balancing between eagerness and restraint. Earth had only recently been admitted to the Academy, and humans were still treated like a curiosity. They lacked advanced biotechnology, relied on tools rather than genetics, and their nervous systems weren't laced with plasma conduits like some of their classmates. They were seen as outdated, useful only for their stubbornness and endless trial and error. Yet Daniel had always noticed things. A squeak in a ventilation shaft, a crack in a console screen, the way Kyle's arm hissed when he tried to grip his stylus. To him, machines whispered when they were in distress. He couldn't leave them unattended. "Your stabilizer rod is out of alignment," Daniel said softly, loud enough for Kyle to hear. "It's pinching the power feed. That's why you can't stand." Some students chuckled. Others looked horrified that a human dared diagnose a cyborg from across the room. Kyle finally turned his head. His right eye, a brilliant mechanical iris, narrowed until its lens whirred like a focusing camera. "You presume much, human," he rasped. His voice had the grain of sand dragged over metal, though it was tinged with fatigue. Daniel didn't flinch. "Presume, maybe, but I can fix." The professor cleared his throat, a guild academic from Marvon Prime. "Class, this interruption is unseemly. Kyle, if your augmentations require maintenance, file the appropriate request with the medical unit. We will proceed." Kyle tried to rise as instructed. His chair tilted as his leg moved half an inch before locking completely. The noise that followed was a sputter of sparks, and the smell of burnt ozone. He fell back down with a thud. The silence this time was worse. Daniel stood up. "Professor, with respect, medical might take hours. He can't even leave this room. If you allow me, I'll fix it now." "You will not dismantle a classmate during lecture," snapped the professor. His tendrils fluttered in indignation. Daniel spread his hands. "I don't need to dismantle him, just adjust one joint. Maybe clean a connection. Humans fix things with simple tools. That's what we do." A murmur spread through the rows. Some students whispered that this was arrogance. Others, curious about the human's boldness, leaned forward. Kyle remained silent, though his gaze lingered on Daniel. There was something in that stare, a mixture of embarrassment and desperation, hidden behind mechanical optics. "Permission granted," Kyle said, voice low but clear enough to stop the professor mid-reprimand. "If he fails, then my humiliation is complete. If he succeeds, then I can walk again. Either way it ends." The professor recoiled, unsure of what rules applied, but Kyle had spoken, and Daniel was already moving down the steps of the lecture hall. His backpack clattered against his side as he dug inside. Out came a screwdriver with multiple fold-out heads, and a small vial of conductive gel. Simple, primitive, but reliable. When Daniel crouched by Kyle's leg, the metallic surface reflected his own uncertain grin. He could smell scorched wiring and faint antiseptic. He pressed a hand against the joint, feeling the warmth. "Yeah," he muttered, "you're overheating." He twisted a latch and, with a quick motion, removed a narrow plate. Beneath, the stabilizer rod jutted slightly out of place, trembling with every pulse of current. Daniel worked with care. He tightened 2 screws, nudged the rod back into its track, then applied a dab of gel where the connector met a frayed wire. The process took less than 2 minutes, though it felt far longer under the weight of every eye in the hall. He replaced the plate, locked it shut, then leaned back. Try it now, Daniel said. Kyle hesitated, then moved his leg. The joint bent smoothly. No sparks, no clicks. Slowly, cautiously, he rose from his chair. The sound was clean, like the first time a door opens without squealing. For the first time in weeks, Kyle stood unaided. The room gasped. Even the professor's tendrils stiffened in shock. Kyle looked down at Daniel, who was still crouched beside him, tools in hand. The cyborg's organic lip curved slightly, almost a smile. How did you know? Daniel shrugged. I listen. Machines talk, if you pay attention. The hall erupted in voices. Some in awe, some in disbelief. Incredulous, some admiring, others resentful. Daniel sat back, suddenly aware of what he had done. He had fixed a classmate with nothing but basic tools in front of 100 witnesses. Humans weren't supposed to be impressive here. They were supposed to be students, barely keeping up with the others. But Kel was standing. That fact could not be erased. Kyle's footsteps echoed down the corridor like a new rhythm. Each stride was deliberate, almost hesitant, as if he expected his leg to seize up again at any moment. But it didn't. The joint carried his weight with smooth, precise balance. Daniel trailed at his side, pretending not to notice the whispers that followed them through the academy's main hall. Did you see what the human did? Hissed one voice from behind a cluster of crystalline students. With a screwdriver, another whispered. Impossible. That cyborg should have been grounded for weeks. Daniel tugged at the strap of his bag. Guess they weren't kidding when they said this place loves gossip. Cal's metal eyes swiveled to him. They gawk because you broke expectation. They will not forgive you idly. Daniel blinked. Forgive me. I fixed your leg. That is precisely the issue. Cal replied. His tone was neither grateful nor cold. It was careful, measured, as though weighing every word. Humans are newcomers. We are told you rely on crude methods, that your species solves problems by trial until something holds together. That narrative comforts them. But now they see you succeed where their engineered protocols failed. They will not like it. Daniel chuckled nervously. So, what you're saying is I should have let you stay stuck in that chair. Cal stopped walking. His organic eye, dark, tired, softened slightly. No. I am saying you risk standing against perception. You did not hesitate. That is rare here. The corridor ended at a large viewport. Outside stretched the stars, brilliant pinpricks against a violet nebula. Cal paused, resting a hand on the railing as though rediscovering what it felt like to stand without mechanical protest. Daniel stood beside him, following his gaze. You know, Daniel said quietly. Back home, people fix their own cars with whatever they've got in the garage. Duct tape, borrowed parts, a hammer if nothing else works. We don't wait for a council or a certified technician to give us permission. We just try. Cal tilted his head, his mechanical iris adjusting. And if you fail, then we learn and try again. For a moment Cal said nothing. Then, without warning, he flexed his repaired leg fully, bending it until the joint hummed, then straightening it with controlled force. The motion was flawless. The faintest shadow of a smile touched his lips. Then perhaps I am fortunate you tried. The next day, the academy hummed with new tension. Instructors had been informed of the incident, and Daniel found himself summoned to the engineering division after morning lectures. The lab was a cathedral of glass and humming consoles filled with diagnostic drones and racks of spare parts. At the center stood Instructor Vera, a long-limbed figure with translucent skin that shimmered with internal light. Human, Daniel, Vera said, voice echoing like crystal struck by a mallet. Explain what you did. Daniel tried to keep his voice steady. Kella's stabilizer rod was out of alignment. I tightened the screws, cleaned the connector, and reseated it. That's all. Vera's luminous eyes brightened. Without schematics, without calibration codes, I didn't need them. I could see it. A rustle of murmurs spread among the assistants observing. Vera raised a hand for silence, then leaned forward. Machines are not toys, human. To touch another student's augmentations without authorization could have destroyed him. You gambled. Daniel met her gaze. Maybe, but I also fixed him. Isn't that what this academy is for? Learning how to help each other across species? Vera studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped aside. Bring him in. The doors opened. Kel entered, walking without falter, each step echoing his restored balance. Gasps rose among the assistants. Vera gestured toward him. Demonstrate. Kel moved with controlled precision, raising his leg, crouching, pivoting. The once failing limb performed flawlessly. Vera folded her arms. Unorthodox, but effective. Perhaps Earth's methods are not without merit. Daniel exhaled in relief, but Kel, expression unreadable, turned toward him. This does not end here. Later, back in the dormitories, Daniel found a small crowd waiting outside his room. Students of different shapes and colors, scaled, feathered, crystalline, furred, hovered with a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. One stepped forward, a delicate Evan girl named Lyra. Human, she said, her feathers quivering. My exosuit regulator squeals when I walk. Could you look at it? Another chimed in. My console overheats when I write reports. Maybe you could. Daniel raised his hand, startled. I'm not a mechanic for hire. Kel appeared at the edge of the crowd, his presence commanding immediate silence. He will not be your servant, he said firmly. But neither will you ignore what he has shown. The human fixes what others overlook. That deserves recognition. The students shifted uneasily, but no one argued. Daniel shot Kel a glance. Thanks. That night, Daniel lay awake staring at the ceiling. The events replayed in his head. The way the hall had gasped. The way Kel now walked with confidence. The way the academy itself seemed to tilt on its axis, after a simple repair. He hadn't meant to cause trouble. He just couldn't stand seeing someone broken when the fix was obvious. But it was more than just screws and gel. It was the first time anyone at the academy had seen a human change the outcome of a situation, not by brute force, but by a quiet act of care. And Daniel had the growing sense that this was only the beginning. The next week began with a challenge, not from a professor, but from Kel himself. He approached Daniel during the midday break, his step steady, his gaze sharp. The cafeteria buzzed with voices, utensils clattering against trays. But the moment Kyle stopped at Daniel's table, silence spread like a ripple. You repaired my leg, Kel said, his mechanical iris narrowing in that analytical way. Now I ask if your skill was luck or substance. Join me in the mechanics arena after class. Prove it before witness. Daniel's sandwich froze halfway to his mouth. Like a duel with screwdrivers. Laughter scattered across the room. But Kyle didn't flinch. It is not combat. It is a trial. You will attempt to restore a malfunctioning drone under time constraints. If you succeed, the whispers will quiet. If you fail, then your moment was accident. Daniel chewed it slowly, realizing every eye was on him. Backing down would brand him a fraud. Accepting meant exposing himself even further. He set the sandwich down. After class, the arena was a cavernous dome filled with rows of disassembled drones, sparks flying from automated repair arms, and the constant hum of machinery. Students filed into the gallery seats, eager for spectacle. Even Vera, the instructor, stood at the edge, arms crossed, her luminous skin shimmering faintly in the low light. A drone was wheeled forward, a battered model with broken wings, sputtering engines, and a glitching navigation core. It twitched on the platform like a wounded insect. Kel gestured. This is your task. 10 minutes. Daniel swallowed hard. 10 minutes wasn't much. He set down his backpack, pulled out his screwdriver and gel, and approached the drone. The first thing he did was listen, not with ears alone, but with the habit he'd honed since childhood, when old radios and cars had filled his family's garage. The drone whined at a high pitch, stuttered, then cut out. He touched the casing, feeling heat. Cooling system clogged, he muttered. He twisted the panel open, exposing dust-choked vents. With a swift brush of his sleeve, he cleared them. The hum stabilized slightly. Next, he checked the wings. One servo was stuck, the gear misaligned. He flicked the joint with his finger, listening to the faint grind. Missing a tooth, he noted, then shifted the gear slightly so the remaining teeth aligned better. Crude, temporary, but enough. Time ticked. The crowd whispered. Daniel pressed his ear against the drone's navigation housing. The rhythm of its pulse was uneven, like a skipping heartbeat. He pried it open, found a loose wire dangling, barely connected. With a dab of gel and a quick twist, he reseated it. The drone shuddered, then lifted slightly off the platform, wings buzzing. The crowd gasped. Daniel grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. Come on, don't fail me now. At exactly 10 minutes, the drone hovered a meter above the ground, shaky, but airborne. The arena erupted in noise. Cheers from some, disbelief from others. Kel stepped forward, his gaze locked on Daniel. You succeeded. His voice carried no resentment. If anything, there was respect in it. They raised a glowing hand, silencing the crowd. The human has demonstrated adaptability, not precision, not elegance, but function. And function saves lives. Daniel exhaled in relief, his knees wobbling. He hadn't realized how tense he was until the cheers filled the dome. But later, when the crowd dispersed, Ko lingered. He walked beside Daniel as they left the arena. You work without schematics, without the codes that tell us how each part should fit. You listen to failure and improvise a solution. That is dangerous. Daniel laughed. Thanks. Kel stopped him. Dangerous, but valuable. Machines in the field do not fail politely. They break, burn, and betray expectation. Your methods would save lives where ours falter. I would learn this from you. Daniel blinked. You want me to teach you? Yes, Kel said simply. Not just me. Others will come already. They whisper your name, not as mockery, but as curiosity. Humans are no longer dismissed. That changes the academy. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't come here to change anything. I just like fixing stuff. Kel's organic eye softened. That may be why you will change more than you expect. Over the next days, Daniel found himself surrounded by requests. Lyra returned, with her squealing exosuit, which he silenced by reseating a warped joint. A scaled student brought a broken data slate that Daniel revived by resecuring a cracked power cell. Even a professor asked cautiously if Daniel might examine a malfunctioning projector. Word spread. The human didn't just study at the academy. He solved problems. But with recognition came resistance. Not everyone welcomed the disruption. One evening, as Daniel walked back to the dorms, 3 upper-year students blocked his path. Their bodies gleamed with expensive augmentations, their eyes sharp with disdain. You think you're clever, the tallest sneered, making us look incompetent with your primitive tricks. This academy is for science, not tinkering. Daniel raised his hands. Look, I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. Too late, another snapped. You've upset the order, and order must be restored. Before Daniel could react, Kel's shadow loomed behind him. His repaired leg carried him forward with smooth power. You will not touch him, Kel said quietly, but his voice carried steel. He is under my protection. The 3 exchanged uneasy glances. None dared challenge a cyborg, whose augmentations had been restored to peak performance. With a hiss of frustration, they dispersed. Daniel let out a shaky breath. Thanks. Guess fixing your leg came with some bodyguard benefits. Kel's mechanical eye glinted. No, it came with friendship. Daniel froze at the word. Friendship. In the vast alien halls of the academy, where humans were still strangers, the word felt heavier than any gear he had ever turned. The semester drew toward its close, and with it came the academy's annual unity trial. Every student was required to participate, not as individuals, but in pairs drawn across species lines. The idea was simple, unity forged through cooperation. The execution, however, was anything but simple. Each pair was given a failing machine, a hostile environment, or a puzzle to solve. Success required skill, trust, and coordination. When Daniel's name was announced, the second name attached was Kale's. A hush fell over the hall. It was a pairing no one could have predicted. The human with primitive tools and the cyborg, who had once been too weak to stand. Some whispered it was poetic. Others thought it a disaster. The trial chamber hissed open, revealing a barren platform surrounded by observation decks. On the platform sat a ground skimmer, its hull cracked, its repulsors sparking feebly. The challenge was clear: repair the vehicle and cross the finish line on the far side of the chamber before the countdown expired. 10 minutes. Kale knelt beside the skimmer, scanning its systems with his internal diagnostics. Navigation is fried. Left repulsor coil detached. Power feed unstable. Too many faults for time allowed. Daniel crouched beside him, hands already on the panel. Then we prioritize. Stabilize power. Get the coil working. Ignore navigation. We don't need elegance. We just need it to run straight. Kale looked at him, metal iris narrowing. Your way again. Function over perfection. Daniel grinned. Hey, perfection's overrated. The timer began. Sparks flew as Daniel pried open the casing, heat rolling off the failing coil. He dabbed conductive gel, fingers moving quickly. Cale reached in with mechanical precision, holding the wire steady as Daniel reseated it. Their movements became a rhythm. Daniel improvising, Cale stabilizing. The skimmer coughed, then hummed weakly. Power holding, Cale said. Good. Repulsor coil next. They shifted to the side panel. The coil had torn loose from its housing, dangling by a single connection. Cale's strength allowed him to lift the assembly into place, but it wouldn't lock. Daniel braced it, wedged a stripped bolt, then jammed a screwdriver through the gap. Temporary brace. Hold it steady. Cale obeyed, locking his grip like a clamp. The coil thrummed back to life. 5 minutes left. The skimmer rose slightly, wobbling. Daniel leapt into the pilot's seat. Get in. Navigation's busted, so you'll need to lean your weight to steer. Cale climbed in beside him, metal frame creaking the seat. Daniel slammed the ignition. The skimmer lurched forward, jerking across the platform. The crowd erupted as it scraped the edge, sparks flying. Left. Daniel shouted. Cale shifted his weight. The skimmer veered, narrowly avoiding a collision. They roared across the chamber, unstable but moving. The finish line loomed, glowing bright. The repulsor stuttered. The coil screamed. Daniel gritted his teeth. Hold. Cale braced the coil with both hands, his cybernetic muscles straining. His organic face twisted with effort, but he did not let go. Together, they hurtled across the line with seconds to spare. The chamber thundered with applause. The skimmer groaned to a halt. Daniel sagged in relief, his heart pounding. Cale released the coil, his hands scorched from the heat. He looked at Daniel, and for the first time, both his organic and mechanical eyes softened. You were right, Cale said quietly. Perfection was not needed, only trust. Daniel smiled. Guess we make a good team. The announcement rang through the chamber. Unity trial completed. Pair, Daniel of Earth, Cale of Sthera. Score successful. Back in the hall, students crowded around them, some in awe, some in disbelief. The whispers had changed tone. No longer mockery, no longer suspicion, but curiosity, and perhaps respect. Lyra fluttered her feathers as she approached. You made it work, both of you. Together, Cale stood tall, repaired legs steady, his scorched hands trembling faintly but held high. Because he listens to machines. And I learned to listen to him. Daniel chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. It's not magic. It's just paying attention. Machines, people, it's all the same. Everyone has a voice, if you're willing to listen. That night, in the quiet of the dorms, Daniel sat by the window, gazing out at the nebula. Cal joined him, silent at first, before finally speaking. I was designed for strength, precision, and endurance. Yet I fell. My augmentations betrayed me, and in that failure, I believed myself diminished. Daniel glanced over. You're not weak, Cal. You just needed someone to help you back up. Everyone does, sometimes. Cal's mechanical iris flickered faintly, as if capturing the moment. And in helping me, you changed more than my leg. You changed me. Leaning back, eyes still on the stars, Daniel smiled. Funny. All I wanted was to fix a broken joint. Instead, I ended up with a cyborg best friend. For a long while, neither spoke. The hum of the station filled the silence, steady and calm. Then, Cal's lips curved into the faintest smile. Best friend. I accept that designation. And somewhere within the Academy's endless halls, the story began to spread, not of a malfunctioning cyborg or a meddling human, but of two students who crossed the line together, proving that strength and improvisation, steel and flesh, could become something greater when united. The Academy would remember the Unity trials that year, but for Daniel and Cal, what mattered most was far simpler. The day a human listened to a machine and a cyborg learned to trust.